Welcome, my name is Luis de Leon, and I'm a professor at Atlantis University. I've been working on computers for many years, so around 25 years, and I started working on networks in 1985. In 1985, I started working with Novell 286, and eventually I moved into Novell 3.11 and 3.12. And that's when Microsoft came out with the first network operating system, which was Windows NT Server. Once I saw Windows NT Server, I moved into it and I started working with it using the TCP IP protocol. With Novell, I was working with the IPS SPX protocol, and that was the reason that Novell didn't survive this revolution of the internet. Today, we're going to be talking about network operations. What is it that you need to do to become a network operations professional or a network administrator? Network operation involves many different things. One of those things is that you always need to be aware of everything working on your network. The key activities on network operations or network administration is to be monitoring your network, of course, to respond to incidents like the network went down, my server is off, etc. You're going to be involved with communications like email, voice, and video. You need to be checking the performance of your network. Because you're going to be the network administrator, you have complete control of your network devices. And therefore, you're going to have to be doing updates and troubleshooting and doing patches to those devices. Other activities that you need to do as a network administrator, it requires you to do backups in storage. You have to control your firewall. You need to make sure that your firewall is working, that nobody is messing with your information or your settings. And also at a more advanced level, you're going to be working with intrusion prevention and other types of security tools. As a network professional, you also need to understand how to do network design. Because once you start working for a company or on your own, you're going to have to do needs analysis of your organization or your customers. You have to do data gathering. You need to know how many computers you need, how many different network devices you're going to be using. You have to document all your work, and based on that documentation, you can do a very good implementation in design of your networks. Also, as a network professional, you're going to be doing a lot of troubleshooting and verification. Troubleshooting is one of the most important things that you're going to be doing as a network operations manager or network administrator. Your career in the network field starts with the CompTIA N+. The CompTIA N+ is a basic network administration certification that you can get. In that certification, the topics that you're going to be learning is designing and implementing small to medium-sized networks. You're going to be learning about networking devices like switches and routers. You're going to learn also how to segment the network traffic by using VLANs, for example. You need to understand network configurations. Once you pass your exam, you're going to understand once you get into a new company or a new customer, you're going to be able to understand the network configuration and troubleshoot any issues and be able to make a better design of the network, for example. And troubleshooting, like I said before, troubleshooting is one skill that you're going to learn a lot when you start practicing your network skills. To be in the network administration field or the network operations field, you need to know about the OSI and TCP IP models. Because the OSI and TCP IP models is the ones that are the models that we use to troubleshoot, to design networks, to understand how networks operate. The OSI model, for example, it has 7 layers. It's a stack of 7 layers that we really use for troubleshooting in design. The reason they came out with the OSI layer was to standardize networks. It was to be able to have multiple different vendors providing hardware or providing application for your networking issues. With the OSI models or TCP IP models, you're going to learn how to troubleshoot and design networks. You're going to be understanding the different protocols that we use in networking, like the TCP IP. You're going to learn about the IPv4 and IPv6 addressing. And also, we need to understand that the 7-layer model is still relevant in today's networks used in the cloud. To give you a little example, I'm going to show you what the 7 layers are in this demonstration. There are 7 layers in networking in the OSI model. The physical layer is the layer number 1. That's where we see cables, and that's where we see the zeros and ones going through the media. Once those zeros and ones go through the media and get to the destination, they go into the second layer, layer number 2, which is named data link layer. That's where you're going to be seeing switches, and that's where you're going to be seeing source and destination physical addresses. Once the data link encapsulates or decapsulates the information, it sends that information to the network layer. At the network layer, that's where you're going to be seeing source and destination IP addresses. That's where you're going to see routers, for example. That's where you're going to be being able to access the resources on the internet using the network layer. The next layer, layer number 4, is called the transport layer. And the transport layer takes care of the transport of protocols like TCP and UDP. At this level, you're going to be seeing the source and destination port numbers. Like in HTTP, you use port 80, for example. The next layer, layer number 5, it takes care of making initializing sessions between client and destination. And then the sixth layer, the presentation layer, takes care of formatting the data that you're going to be sending through the media. At this layer, you're going to be seeing formats like PDFs, decryption, encryption, zip files, for example. And finally, the application layer or the 7th layer, that's where you see your applications like SMTP, HTTP, or any kind of applications that uses the internet to control or access resources. Today, I'm going to be showing you 3 different tools that you're going to be learning when you learn how to use networking. You need to learn those 3 tools. Those tools are fundamental for your knowledge of networking. And the first tool that I'm going to be showing you is, it may be the one that most people use, is called Cisco Packet Tracer. And Cisco Packet Tracer it belongs to Cisco, is a simulator. And with this tool, you can simulate any network, from small office networks to a very sophisticated different types of networks, WANs, LANs, the internet. You can simulate almost anything. In this case, today I'm going to build a small network, like your home office network. And to do that, what I need is to have all my resources that I need. For example, to set up a small network using a cable connection, connecting to your cable provider, I can use my cable provider. The cable provider is going to give me a modem, and that modem needs to be connected using coaxial cable to my provider. In my home network, what is it that I'm going to have? I'm going to have lots of computers and devices, for example. And usually we have a Wi-Fi device that we use for our computers and tablets. I'm going to add it here in my configuration. My Wi-Fi router or Wi-Fi modem is connected to my cable modem. And here, I'm talking about all these cables and devices. By using cables, I'm talking about layer number 1, the physical layer, for example. Which devices do I have in my home office? I have a computer. I have a couple of laptops, for example. I have a couple of tablets. And of course, my smartphones. And they'll connect to my Wi-Fi device. And because I can simulate anything with Cisco Packet Tracer, I can simulate the Wi-Fi, the wireless connection, for example. I'm going to change the SSID name so I can connect to my devices. And you can see that, boom, it comes right away. It connects to my Wi-Fi. All these devices are wireless devices. They connect to my Wi-Fi modem that is connected to my cable modem that is connected to my cable provider. In all of these, this is the physical layer. This Wi-Fi signal belongs to the layer number 1. Now, laptops usually comes with 2 interfaces, network interfaces. You can connect them wire or you can connect them wireless. Packet Tracer allows you to play with the hardware of your devices also. For example, I'm going to switch my network interface that I have on my laptop from wire to wireless. And once I turn it on, it's going to connect to my Wi-Fi device. Same with the other laptop. I'm going to turn it off, remove the wire interface, and replace it with a wireless interface. And then I have to put it back on. And all of these belongs to layer number 1. Everything that I'm doing right now is physical layer skills. You have to know where the cable is connected. You have to make sure that the Wi-Fi is connection that is on, for example. And finally, my computer, usually we have a computer that is wire connected to my network. And in this case, I'm going to use Ethernet to connect to my device, network device. And if you can see this network device, it has his antennas, and it has 4 ports for wire connections, and usually it has a port for the internet connection. And this is what I'm simulating with this device. And usually these small devices, they come pre-configured, so usually you don't have to do any configuration in it, like changing the IP addressing, for example. These devices already assigning IP addresses to my devices. And IP addresses belongs to layer 3, to the network layer, right? And because this right here is like a mini switch, that switch is a layer 2 device. So you can see here that I'm simulating from layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3 devices. And this is Packet Tracer. With Packet Tracer, like I said, you can simulate almost any type of network, from a small network like this to a very sophisticated network using routers and switches and VLANs, etc. The other tool that I'm going to show you is VirtualBox. And also with VirtualBox, you need to learn how to use it, and you need to learn all the different network configuration settings that you have. And VirtualBox, in this case, VirtualBox is using my computer as a host to virtualize computers that I have set up here. And with this tool, you can also simulate different networks, and you can also simulate troubleshooting of networks for example, if you're trying to design a network, small network, you can use either Cisco Packet Tracer or you can use VirtualBox to simulate those computers running on your network. In my case, I have 2 computers running here using Linux, using the Raspberry Pi Linux. And they are running on top of my host. This is Linux running on top of Windows 10, for example. And each one of them has its own network configuration. And with this tool, I can simulate networks, I can troubleshoot networks, and I can design networks, for example. Now, with Cisco, if you get into Cisco, if you're trying to get into the Cisco certification, the CCNA, the topics that you need to learn about Cisco is the network components. You're going to learn, you need to learn about switches, routers, cables, firewalls, etc., different topologies that are being used today to connect to different types of networks. And because nowadays we also talk about the cloud, we also need to simulate, or we also need to learn topologies that connect on-premises networks to on-cloud networks. You're going to learn the TCP and UDP protocols in depth. You're going to learn about IPv4 addressing and subnetting, which is not hard to learn. IPv6, how IPv6 works, virtualization components, and switching components. In Cisco, switching is very important because switching allows you to control the traffic going inside your network. Depends on the size of your network. You can control that traffic using switches and using virtualization components also. One of the main concepts between Cisco routers, for example, and cloud networking is that those network providers like Azure and AWS, most of them, they use a lot of Cisco routers. They use a lot of Cisco switching, for example. The connections between on-premises networks and cloud networking today is the same as being 2 networks in physical locations. The cloud networking works the same as on-premises networking. Of course, you need to understand what is a virtual network, what is a virtual machine, what is a virtual VPC, for example. On AWS, a virtual network is called a VPC, and a virtual machine is called an EC2. I'm going to show you a little bit more about virtualization using another product called VMware ESXI. VMware is the brand that we think is one of the best brands for virtualization. In my case, I'm going to connect to a server, and this is a physical server using virtualization. It's not like VirtualBox, for example, on which VirtualBox, I'm using a software that is running on top of my host computer that is a Windows 10 computer. With VMware ESXi, I'm connecting to a server that is running the ESXi operating system. ESXi allows me to have virtual networks and virtual computers in an isolated environment, and that's on premises usually. And this is where the combination of public cloud and private cloud and hybrid cloud comes in, because you may have a virtualized network on premises connected to a cloud network, a virtual network on the cloud. I'm going to connect to my server. So I had to connect to the VPN first. So this system, ESXi, is running on this computer. This computer is an HP ProLiant DL160 Generation 9. And this computer has 48 gigabytes of RAM, and it has 1 terabyte of space. And this is only for the purposes of virtualization. In this small server, I have 9 virtual machines. And there's a combination of Linux computers with Windows 7, Windows Server, Windows 10 computers. And they are all connected, those virtual computers are connected to a virtual switch. In that virtual switch, as you can see here, this is my virtual switch. My physical computer has two network cards, two physical network cards. And those two physical network cards are connected to a virtual switch that has 9 ports for my computers. The more ports I add, for example, I can have up to 3,456 different ports on this virtual switch. And that depends on the resources of my computer, of course. I will need more RAM, more hard drive space, more CPU power, for example. In this case, I have 9 computers connected to a virtual switch, and that virtual switch is connected to 2 physical network cards that are connected to a real physical switch that is connected to the internet, for example. And this is how you can, usually many companies are using this technology right now. The combination of VMware ESXi with AWS or Azure, for example. Combination of having a network, a virtual network, a private cloud on premises connected to the public cloud on Azure or AWS. And this concludes my workshop on network operations and administration.